Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Moxie Nelson. On this podcast, we talk about all things to increase performance, add muscle, improve body composition, and do all of it without destroying your health in a flexible framework. Today on the program, we've got my buddy Coach Troy from Canada, and he is talking, and we are talking, all about different aspects of performance. Even if your goal is to add muscle and improve body composition, I would make an argument that tracking your performance is the best thing to do to make sure that you are staying in line for those particular goals. So even clients I have who are working on purely physique goals, we keep track of their performance in the gym very closely. And this can just be a simple notebook. It doesn't need to be technology, which we'll talk a lot about technology here, but it can be rather simple. And in this podcast, we get into all sorts of fun stuff, from monitoring on game day, advances in sports testing and tech, hockey specific acceleration testing and analysis, load monitoring, important of speed, change of direction, even cognitive components, and some other innovation training technologies. And at the end, we briefly talk about what is the future of AI in sports science. So I think you'll love this podcast. I got to see Troy at ISSN again, and what's cool is not only is he a high-level individual who understands the physiology and the mechanisms that are going on, he is actually using technology to perform testing to see if his hypotheses are correct or not. And I think that's the part that gets missed a lot of times with technology, is it now allows us to test in ways we weren't really able to before. So in many circumstances, you can get data after a session or after one test, instead of having to put together a whole 12 or 16 week or 48 week or even longer cycle to see what the results were, depending upon what you are testing. So, sponsors today related to testing, we've got Element. If you're looking for tasty electrolytes, I'm drinking the raspberry one today. Tecton will be back. They're in the process of coming out with some brand new formulations, and I can't say anything else other than that, but it hopefully will be out very soon. So if you've gone to their website or if you've tried to find any, the older product is not on the market currently anymore. They're trying to phase that out for the newer stuff coming out very soon. So as soon as we have an announcement, I will let you know. And then on the testing side, we've got, check out the Beyond Power Vultra 1 device. And what's super cool about it is you can do testing with it. You can do isometric testing. You can do isokinetic testing. And in the podcast here, we talk about even fancier equipment from other names that may be $50,000 that do some really cool stuff. But the size of that machine and the price tag are just out of it for vast majority of almost everyone. But what's cool about the Vultra 1 is you can do that type of testing in the device. It is a small unit. You can bolt right on to a cage or a pole, or I even have one of their little platforms now if you're doing curls or deadlifts or things like that. And what I really like about it is you can instantly change and do heavy eccentrics and split that even within the lift. So the example I've been using lately is if you're doing a seated row, I can pull back with 100 pounds concentric, so pulling the bar towards me, and it'll auto-detect that end range of motion, and I can then add an eccentric component of whatever I want. So maybe now it's going to pull the handle back to the device, the eccentric portion of that seated row, and I can add an additional, say, 50 pounds to it. So concentrically, I'm pulling at 100, and then eccentrically, I'm going up to 150. And the device will go up to 200 pounds. And it's direct drive, so 200 pounds is pretty significant. And the other cool part is I have it set up on there for peak wattage. And so each time I pull back on the concentric, it gives me a peak watt rateout. And when I'm no longer able to hold that wattage, even with the heavy eccentric, then I'm auto-regulated. I know I'm done with that particular set. So check them out. A full disclosure, I liked it so much I requested to Elliot that I be an affiliate. So I am an affiliate for that. So assume I'm just a shill for Beyond Power. Also, if you're interested in metabolic carts, you can hit me up about the Pinoy device. This is a metabolic cart that I use at my place here for all testing. It is portable, it is gas cowled, it will do RER, and it'll pretty much do everything the bigger, more expensive units will do. Again, it's not a cheap device, but I've always wanted to have my own metabolic cart, so I've been able to use that for quite a few years. Again, I am an affiliate for them, so just reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Enjoy this podcast here with Troy and myself talking all about technology. Hello.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good. I'm just turning my phone off here before I forget.
Same.
How's life in Canada, eh?
Right. It's real humid today, so I'm hoping that breaks. So
Yeah, it's kind of been the way it's been down here. Unfortunately, I haven't been outside much today. I've had a bunch of stuff going on, but yeah, it's been a little toasty warm down here the past few days.
whereabouts are you, Mike?
I'm in the Twin Cities, just Wiper
Okay,
Lake, so north, 20 minutes from the Twin Cities.
gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, and you're further north than I am by quite a bit, correct?
Yeah, so about 4 hours north of Toronto.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So pretty much like straight. Well, it's a little bit shorter now because they've opened up. It was 2 lanes, highways traveling from there to Toronto for a
Oh,
long
wow.
time.
Okay.
So finally, we're getting to the 1900s and having a couple more lanes.
Nice. And what's the nearest big city again?
So nearest big city, I guess like that would be Toronto to us. So we're kind of like in the middle where we've got Toronto to the south, and then east we'll have Ottawa,
Okay.
and so that's pretty much where we sit in Ontario.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, any particular topic you were interested in chatting about today? This is pretty informal.
Yeah, no, just I guess some of the stuff maybe that we even talked about down at the conference, and then I think some of the pieces I feel that would be pretty interesting. But I mean, it would be kind of touching on some of the stuff that we did for in-game monitoring for the basketball team that I work with here, the Sudbury Five. So we use some of the inertial measurement units from Plantiga
Oh,
to
cool.
yeah. So we it was super cool. I can maybe the story behind that's kind of cool. How I pulled those in, like the reasons why was kind of cool. So and I don't know, stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah. So maybe if we just even pick a rough topic of like, I don't want to say maybe performance and predictive testing, even though I know a lot of this isn't really predictive per se, but
No, no, no. I just think with some of the correlation of things that we've been like, I did a couple of, I think some cool. Not that I had any intent on publishing some of the studies, but just more for more internal use to help some of the teams I was working with. We did some cool stuff with Moxie. I see a Knox box on
yeah,
your
I
shelf
got
there.
Moxie, I got a Pinoy, I've got the Knox
Yeah.
device. So yeah.
All the things. So we did some cool stuff on ice with actually a pretty good two groups. So one was a U15 girls hockey team with Moxie on ice doing a 30-second like full out skate,
Oh
and
yeah.
then we did the same thing with their male counterparts, and we found some interesting um, kind of changes between one group versus like basically like female versus male. What we found was some interesting things there too. So um, specifically on there, what we found was um, much lower oxygen utilization on the female side than on the male side during this,
Hmm.
except for one was seemed to be an outlier. She actually just committed D1. So
Hmm.
kind of interesting there. But then for most
Yeah.
part, her female counterparts was a very like barely a dip in some
Hmm.
of their SMO2. So just
Interesting.
I've got a bunch of stuff like that because I played
Yeah.
with all the things. So
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I'll do a short pause and then you're good for about 55 minutes. Is that right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I have a hard stop at 55 minutes from now, but we're good
Yeah,
until then.
yeah, sounds good.
Cool. All right, I'll just do a short little pause. Hey man, how's it going?
Great, Mike. How you been?
Hey, very nice to see you again at ISSN. I see it looks like you got an ISSN shirt on there with bright colors, which is awesome.
Right. Nobody does tie dye quite like Jose. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought it would be great to have you on the program today and just talk roughly about just some of the cool testing and just different results and stuff you got going on there. Because I think I had this discussion with, well, I'll leave it vague, but it was professional teams and people associated with them in Europe when I was over there recently. And my counter argument to, and they generally agreed with me, was we don't really need to argue about a lot of this stuff anymore. We can get specific testing on specific athletes like cheaper and more accessible now than we've ever been able to. Which I think there wasn't a necessarily news flash to them, but I think with a lot of people, there's well, this is the way we've always done it, and they point to
exactly.
X athlete who's very successful. And again, a lot of those methods could work, but even stuff simple like hydration, you can use a NIC sensor, you can stick it on the
Yeah.
athlete, you can get live data from a simulation or a competition. We talked about Moxie, Panoe. I've got a Knox device. Like again, like some of these devices are in the thousands of dollars, but if you take like a Panoe device, which is a metabolic cart, it's
Mhm.
still in the thousands of dollars. But when you consider the metabolic carts I used at the University of Minnesota were 40 to $50,000,
Yeah.
it's well below that. Um, so what are your thoughts about just testing in general now compared to even 5 years ago?
So gigantic difference. So I have spent like decades, especially in the hockey space, more my space has been more hockey um, for a long time. And often when I get contracted out to some of these teams, I'd say, okay, cool. What have you done for off ice testing or on ice
Yeah,
testing? And then what do you actually even do with that data?
yeah,
And you like that was the big one. Like, why waste the time if you're just gonna, just test,
yeah,
So just the difference between 5 years ago to now was even as I'm sure you're well aware, like when you're in university and you run like a metabolic assessment, it needed like three people. You needed, 50, 60,000, sometimes $100,000 in tools just to make it happen. And like on your statement, now we can do that relative like with one person, maybe in an hour and a bit to try to get something at what was really as hard to attain as a metabolic assessment. Um, and just with rewinding even 5 years ago, just some of the stuff that I would use here to test for things like there's lots that we'll do. So just something like a vert test, for example, we would use sensors, just like ground contact sensors, that kind of
sure,
stuff. And yeah, it did the job because 30 years ago we would just have a ruler on the side of a wall and
yeah,
jump up.
yeah.
So
Getting a
of
Vertec was high tech.
yeah, that was
You
amazing.
have to
That was the
flip the little
coolest thing
things.
ever. Oh yeah. Everyone still gets kind of fired up over that. But now, like even just to where we are now, where we have tools that I used specifically, things like a Plantiga monitor. Like I've got uh like the insole here, we would just pop in the athlete's shoe and it runs at 400 hertz. So it's going to get 400 samples a second with 30 different metrics, so when it's going to measure like average speed, their top speed, stride length, the asymmetries, you name it, like it's a lot. And I feel that sometimes now that everything is really accessible, we've some people go too far the other way. And I found myself getting that as well, where we need to get like all the things, right?
Yeah.
So give it all to me, kind of thing. So, but now to be able to reel things in and relatively quick and non-evasive, where we can just pop it in someone's shoe, they don't even know it's there. Some of my basketball players actually prefer those insoles than the ones that came with their shoes. So we get tons of great information, and especially on the practitioner side, where it doesn't feel as clinical. where, you know, sometimes it's like super formal, like inside like those settings, and it's not really conducive to a lot of like solo people when you're trying to conduct things with a team. Like to try to run through 20 people on a hockey team to try to get them tested, like that used to take a lot of time. And now I find myself with, six, seven of the Plantiga monitors. I run through a team in half an hour and I'm done the assessment, outside of like strength assessments, like that kind of stuff. So it's come so far so fast, and I think that's been such a positive step for me to be able to provide much better information for teams. The most recent example was, and one of the one that kind of hits home to me the most was with Chloe Lacasse. She plays on the women's soccer team for here in Canada, and she also plays for Utah Royals, the professional on the pro side. So in October last year, she scores a hat trick in one game, and the very next game she blows her ACL.
Oh.
So to go from being the absolute like best of the best, she's one of the best players out there, and then the next minute you just don't know if you're, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty that goes along with that. So she's from my town, Sudbury, and typically most of her therapy would had to have been done back with her pro or now on the national team. But because of the tools that we have now with Plantiga force plates, like pocket dynamics, that kind of stuff, we've been able to do her recovery here at home, so she can spend time with her fiance. She can be around her family while she's recovering, and I can provide some really good information back to the home, back to their pro team, where they know that they're getting like a really high level of care. So, especially as a small town like ours, there's like 100,000 people here, middle of nowhere, literally Canada. To be able to have those conversations with teams makes my life like so much better when it comes to the assessment side.
Yeah, and you can show actual data on the progression. So it's not like, oh, trust me, she's doing great. And the other team's like, we don't know you from Adam. I don't know if we trust you, right? If it's a new
Oh,
person, you
for
just happen to be
sure.
in the town. Again, I'm not saying you personally,
No, no, of
but
course, that for sure.
you can show data now to be like, you don't have to trust me. Like, just don't take my word for it. It's like the Russian phrase, like trust but verify. Here's the
Yeah.
actual output data. We did this test or this test or this isometric or whatever, and you can see progression over time. And those are actual output tests that give you a status of where she's at, so they can be like, oh, okay, great. So it looks like everything is on track. Or hey, maybe it's not progressing as much as we shouldn't. Let's change this or let's change that, right? Versus, hey, trust me, and like, 4 months go by and like, oh my God, what happened? This is a disaster.
Oh, for sure. And especially in like that kind of case where someone's worth, like I've worked with, NHLers, I've worked with
Yeah.
other like pro athletes, national level athletes. So to be able to give them that feedback, like level of comfort definitely kind of changes. But to see things like her running like on a pressurized treadmill, to get to let the team know that okay, it's not just her running and her doing her thing, but we can see maybe that asymmetry change at a certain pressure where we need to maybe pull back yet. So if that leg is starting to compensate, like her non-affected limb is starting to compensate a lot to kind of get off the affected limb, then we can pull back a little bit before it's too late.
Yep.
So we can stay within that good range where those asymmetries start to kind of sculpt back to where they should be. So, and the other side too, with having things that no one really cares if they're wearing it, doesn't really change anything, like the monitor, is doing like in-game analysis. So of
Yep.
course, like in basketball, like load monitoring with Kawhi Leonard back a couple of years, that's no one even really heard the phrase that much until he started to really kind of like ramp that up. And what we did with the Sudbury Five was some of the athletes that we would see that were most like some of the starters, we would have them wear the monitors. And we could I could communicate some of the information to the coach, to the medical staff, almost like as an in-between, like someone as a director of performance, like what my job really is as like the between the coaches and the medical staff. I can provide both sides with really good information, like, hey, just letting you know, the our our big is really starting to have some growing asymmetries. So could we have maybe somebody take a look at him? And that really did come up for us to go into the playoffs to see one of the players really started to get those. Like asymmetries aren't the end of the world, but when they start to
Yeah.
become bigger and bigger,
Yep.
we have to start to investigate things, right? So I'm not in that camp where, oh, everything has to be perfect, because that's nonsense. But
Yeah.
I
Especially in a
I
sport that's a little bit more symmetric, like basketball, compared to
right.
tennis or golf.
For sure. I mean, you get a golfer, and if they're perfectly symmetrical, like I don't really know
They're
how.
probably a crappy golfer.
Yeah, honestly, they're probably me, to be honest. So, so we've seen like that to be able to have that kind of information to really help the medical staff to say, hey, no, I'm not sure what's going on because that's not my department, but
Yep.
what I see is some growing asymmetries with this player A. Well, they go in and take a look to see how he's feeling, because some players don't want to say anything, especially in our league. It's
Yep.
a developmental league. You play, you got to be in there, you got to be in the game, right? To kind of get your worth. And it turns out that there was a bit of an injury that he really wasn't saying a lot about. So to let him know that that I'm there to help, and he doesn't see wearing the monitors as a detriment, right? So it was cool to see, to be able to kind of add a bit more value on my end, instead of just saying, yeah, coach, like thumbs up, everyone's good. We can have some really good data to show, okay, well, it looks like the players are slowing down a bit, like some of like the common guards. We can see at some point some of the guards are getting a lot faster, and then they start to kind of slow down a bit. Then we can start to see what their practice schedule is like, and just come up with a better information package for the coach. It's not like, okay, coach, well, this is what you have to do. It's, well, no,
Hmm.
here's the information for you, and you decide, because you're the head coach. So he was able to make some adjustments that I hope made a difference, and to be able to help those players long term as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a a key point, that we can do a lot of this testing in the actual environment the sport is being played. Where a lot of
Yeah,
the older stuff was, you could do some pretty cool, like even take metabolic hearts. I mean, yes, there's been kind of portable ones for a while. You can debate how useful they are now. They've definitely gotten way better over the
yeah.
years. But you go back many years, like the portable metabolic cart didn't exist. So
No, I
you had to
know. Yeah.
do, like hockey players, do you do a treadmill? Do you do a bike? Like most people don't have a skating ramp they can do testing on that's trying to simulate a gait pattern for skating. Now where you have, portable ones, you can stick a Moxie sensor on them, and
Yeah.
it's relatively less intrusive. And so now you can monitor them doing their actual sport and get actual data from a live um, competition or practice, instead of trying to go, well, the VO2 max on the treadmill is this. Okay, that's helpful, but does that really transfer? If it doesn't, how much does it transfer, and how useful is it?
Yeah. Well, and that was one thing that we found with some, like in particular, some of the goaltenders that we're working with,
Sure.
where some of them were just garbage runners. Like, no, like it's just, they just were
A lot of
never
hockey players are not
runners.
the best runners, but
No,
you put
at
them on ice,
all.
you're like, holy crap, that dude's amazing.
So, and that's what we try to find like a better way to try to assess that, right? So even with the portable units being on ice, with the temperatures being so low, often
Yeah, that
they're
makes
too
it
low for
tricky.
them to be really
Yep.
effective, and sometimes it just doesn't. You're not going to get great data from that if it's too cold. So
Yep.
that's what we moved into, using the Moxie monitor on ice, because we couldn't do those assessments, because I want to try to provide the best information I can. And of course, VO2 max, is going to be correlated to good abilities across many sports. So what I wanted to do with the Moxie monitor was just, let's just see what's what, because I haven't seen that abundance of data yet. So we had a female and male team, both of the same age. Um, and what we found was something really, really, I didn't think we were going to find, but the utilization, the SMO2 utilization on the female side was much lower than it was generally speaking on the male side. With one major outlier on the female side, she actually just signed Div 1
Hmm.
yesterday or the day
Oh,
before,
wow.
which was kind of like interesting. So, what does that mean? I don't know. We would have to dig around more. Um, but it was just interesting to be able to see what that looks like. And on the other side, to be able to show those players, like maybe at what time they start, and the coaches, that was the big piece, was to see at what time do they start to have a compensation pattern. So we would see that much earlier using inertial measurement units and a Moxie than a coach could ever see. We actually did this test on a skating treadmill, um, where we had a Moxie and an IMU on the athlete's skate, and the treadmill was only going 8 miles an hour, and
Hmm.
I could see a bit of a change. And because coaches are always, no, like my eye is great, which is
Mm-hmm.
super valid. You know, we get
Yeah, yeah, totally.
some coaches with crazy eyes, like they see stuff that it just blows me away. But to be able to show them data that they couldn't possibly see, so to see that change in whether it was ground contact time or whatever, so that kind of led us to doing a bit of a test on ice with a 20-meter acceleration. It's a typical hockey test, like when it comes to skating. So what we really wanted to find was like, was there a correlation between um, what makes someone a good accelerator and what doesn't? Because there's so many opinions on what makes someone like a good skater. And for the life of me, it drives me bananas when a coach comes in and it's always, hey, you have to work on his or her first three steps. Like the amount of time I've heard that, just it's almost weekly. So what I wanted to do with a colleague of mine, we wanted to see like what makes someone a really good skater. And before, or a really good accelerator, I should say. So before we couldn't do that at all. We could just time them and like hope for the best and just try to like analyze video, like that kind of stuff. So what we did see was the drive index on the athletes was tightly correlated to their 20-meter time.
Hmm.
So that's basically you take ground contact time divided by air time, and you would get that drive index. So then people say, okay, well, now what? Well, that tells us that if someone spends too much time on the ice, it's their time's going to change. Or if they're really short in the air, well, that's also going to change. So there has to be that division of both. So that kind of led us, because so many coaches up here, they have a lot of opinions, but not really backed by much. So to kind of have something tangible to show them, like, no, like what you're saying is only half right. This is like the real deal of what we found anyway. Because we can only speak, of course, for what we find in our environment, but to be able to show a coach that and for them to go like, huh, maybe there's something to this science stuff, because I feel what my experience has been with coaches is that, especially in hockey terms, there's really stuck in the dark ages when it comes to their beliefs. Well, coach how you were coached kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but there's just so much there's great universities up here doing great work, some down there, of course, as well. So, and us privately doing our own thing. So trying to get to the bottom of it and to try to provide something better, more long term, was kind of the goal. So to be able to test hundreds of hockey players, like we've been able to kind of get to that level now, because it's been a few years, and to try to create a bit of a database to show players, to show coaches, um, just what it really means to on the performance side. So players that are accelerating that have this drive index are the ones that seem to do the best. So this is what you should work on, like to be able to provide a competent plan to coaches to help them on ice.
And I often wonder how much of this it has to be also be translated, because I also think of if the coach is saying, "Hey, this player is, 1, 2, or 3 steps short all the time." Usually you're thinking, okay, acceleration, right? And the coach may even say, "Oh, he's a poor accelerator." And I'm thinking, okay, like exactly what you did. Like, let's test the acceleration. But if they're a fast accelerator and they're still getting this feedback from the coach, my brain goes to maybe they're just really bad at sequencing. Like they're physically fast, but their ability to predict what's going to happen is just really
Yes.
crappy, right? So the coach is really trying to tell you that this player is not where he or she is supposed to be when the shit's going down, right? In their brain, they're assuming that it's a physical thing, that they're just slow. Where it definitely, 100% could be that there's some athletes who are faster and slower, and that makes a huge difference. But if you test them and you find that, okay, his or her speed is the same as these other athletes, but I'm still getting the same feedback from the coach,
Mhm.
then it allows you to go, oh, okay, well, what else is it? Maybe it's a sequencing thing. Maybe it's a prediction thing. Maybe they have an eye thing that's going on, or vestibular thing, or who knows what. It could be something else. They've got 4 concussions, so like, but it allows you then to troubleshoot and figure out what is actually going on instead of just making the assumption that they're just slow and spending all their time on this acceleration work and everything else that might be beneficial for someone who is slow. But again, that may not be the root of what their actual problem was.
No, for sure. And I think that like to that point, it's to be able to show them, okay, well, this is their acceleration time, and
Yep.
this is, so just number one, like whether you're using a hand timer or whatever, of course we're going to use like laser timers, but we'll use gates to get correct times, and I think that every team should have one. They're not like super super expensive; they
Yeah,
last
they're not
forever.
so
But
bad now.
no, but even if you didn't, if you just had a stopwatch to see how someone really is, so then you can have your buckets, as I like to call them, um, to see if someone is, if they're slow. It's binary. Are they slower than the mean, or are they slower than the
Yep.
average? Yes or no. Like it's simple. And if they aren't, then where should we start to dig from there? As my dad used to say, it's your IQ can make up for a lot. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
so if I was the world's okayest cornerback, but I would see things a bit quicker, but my legs just weren't fast enough to catch up to the rest of them. So to be able to provide that kind of information, to start digging in probably the right areas instead of just, I'm sure you've probably run into this too, where you talk with someone, they just have spent years and years and years working on the problem, where
Yep.
that not necessarily was really the problem, when they could have been digging in a much more fruitful direction. So to a lot of times, what the reason what I like to have, some like we have all the tools that we could possibly want here, we can use them and then find out what direction we should go in.
Yep.
So okay, well, this isn't working. So after a month, okay, cool. Well, that didn't work. We got to move this direction, like just what we do with many of the athletes that we'll have come in through the summer when it comes to the like their off season conditioning. Like we only have so much time, and it's kind of funny to hear people on social talk about, oh, you have to do like this and whatever. It's, dude, you don't train anybody. Like that's
A
100%.
lot of those people, you ask them like, okay, who have you trained? Like and they're like,
Doesn't have to be a
whoa,
pro. Yeah.
well, I've read a lot of stuff.
I read this thing on T Nation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So great resource, just, but some of us have, like, I've spent almost 30 years like digging, trying to find the right direction, and I am so not holier than thou. What's great about being kind of in my position is I get to be friends with the people that are the best at what they do. And that's, to me, like that's the greatest position to be in. So to be able to dig in those directions and find out that maybe what we're doing or what they're doing isn't necessarily the direction they should be going in. So like acceleration. Okay, well, no, dude, like you say you're 10-meter fly in, you're running a 101. Bro, you're good. Like let's go work on something else. So like we just had a Div 1 kid go to school, and he wasn't running a 101 here, but I think he had some extra pizzazz when he went down there, and
yeah.
and he hit a 101. So he's like, Coach, I hit a 101. I'm like, okay, good. So let's just maintain and let's go work
Yeah.
on other qualities. So, and often, for my experience anyways, when we start digging around in any of the sandboxes, a lot of times it's just quantifying what we kind of already know, but we can put a number
Yep.
to that, right? Where someone is slow. Well, okay, what does that mean though? Instead of
Yeah.
just, back in the day, well, you're slow, so you got to go get faster. But like, what does that mean? Ground contact time? Does that mean like force into the ground? Like, what does that really mean?
Or even
So
directionally specific, right? Because a lot
yeah,
of these are sports. These are not just track where you're running linear, so they may be saying you're slow, but they actually mean you can't change direction, which is,
right.
I get it. It's actually a different thing, but to people who are watching someone, they may just associate and be like, "Oh, that player is slow." It's like, well, they may be linear fast, but they just can't change directions very good. So that's where they get beat every time.
And so I've had this kind of conversation with other people, where even in the NFL, like the people that have
Yeah,
scored except for, Xavier Worthy, except for him, most of the people that are the fastest 40s don't really produce that much in the NFL,
Not
and
in
I
general.
can't,
There's a few
I,
there's a few freaks who are
yeah,
outliers,
for
but
sure.
not
And
the average though.
no, and that, which is, I mean, yeah, you need speed. And like, I
Yes.
think speed is the most important. I'm wearing a bracelet that literally says speed over everything. So like I think that speed really matters. But what I think matters a lot is, your braking ability and of course change of direction. Like to your point that of being able to measure like that change of direction, well, we can do that now where we couldn't possibly do that, especially when it mattered most, like in a game. So to be able to see how many times somebody is accelerating or decelerating in a game, we can create more competent practice plans or help the coach create those practice plans as well. Well, like we've had basketball players, like some of those guys are big, like they're like 250 pounds, they're like
Yeah.
damn near 7 feet tall, like they're unit of a human. So accelerating, decelerating a ton, like one was 154 accelerations and 148 decelerations in a game, like that
Oof.
tick tick tick, like that kind of stuff. So um, that bringing that information to the coach to say, hey, well, this is kind of what we can. This is how many times so and so is accelerating and decelerating. Maybe get a couple of the guys to wear some of the monitors in practice just to see what that kind of looks like. So if you're doing like far too little, we know that's not really beneficial. You just, especially at the pro level, and maybe it's like way too much, like where we can kind of find that happy medium for the players so they can develop. So to be able to monitor things in game is like I feel on my end of things, like it's great to have the clinical side of things where you have like the metabolic carts, you have the force plates and all the good stuff, velocity bar, speed readers, so you can get all the information you want. But what matters most is when they're playing the game.
Yeah, because at the end of
So
the day, it's you're building athletes, not just monsters in the gym. And again, that
yeah,
doesn't mean that gym training is not effective. It just means that what is the outcome you're trying to get. And like the speed example, like the example I use, and granted, I'm a huge Minnesota Vikings fan, is Justin Jefferson. Like,
oh my
is he
God, yeah,
fast? Yes. Is he probably the fastest person in the NFL? No, probably not even top 10, maybe. But you could argue he's probably one of the best receivers in the NFL, or easily in the top 3 to 5. But if you
yeah.
watch his ability to cognitively know where to be, to run a route, to stop and change direction, to be in the right place at the right time, like all those things are ridiculously high. And I would argue that yes, you still have to be fast, but it's a lot of those other things that add up to make the person really good at their position and to play really well as an athlete in the actual game.
For sure. Like I don't think there's probably a bigger insult to an athlete than telling them they're a really good practice player.
Yeah.
Right. So to go in, they're in the gym. Like we have some guys that are there. Like I bring one guy in to train with some of the pros that we have. Like he's a monster. He'll deadlift 600 pounds. He rows like a 112 for a 500 meter. Like
Damn.
he produces a wicked amount of power on the bike. Like he's just a genetic freak. And I've also worked with him for a long time. But does he have the ability to play pro? Like no, like he's doing just fine. He's working in a great job, so don't feel bad for him. But it's just it's just to take what he could do, and if to have the other abilities that like the almost like the intangibles that makes a pro. Of course, we can kind of, I guess, like quantify some of them, but to take some of those qualities that really make a pro isn't always, especially in a game like hockey, someone's like physical traits. It's, their IQ, how fast they can, or how much they can slow down and speed up the game, like a lot of those kind of variables, where we get some of the best players in the world that are under 200 pounds, that are dominating the game, when you get some of these guys that are 6'6". We have another guy in the NHL that's going to be damn near 7 feet.
Damn.
So it's crazy how fast they are too.
Yeah.
Um, but to think of, just like, I think it's great that we have all, because I'm a big sports fan. Obviously, I've been doing this like my whole life, but um, to think of what those little pieces that we really can't measure, where it's almost like the goal for us opening this place in the location that we did, like up here in Northern Ontario, was to give everyone access to a sports science lab where there was no possibility of that before. That was the goal. So now there's no excuses when it comes to like this side of things. So now like what are you going to do with the other side is kind of like that was kind of the goal. So and all of that sort of came from that way back in 1986 and me watching Rocky Four when they were building
Yeah,
building
yeah.
Ivan Drago, the red machine in the lab, me being this little kid going like, yo, you could do that with science. That's amazing. So um to take all that nerdiness and then throw it into trying to see what we could do with all of this side, but then knowing full well it's those little pieces that those athletes that they have to have, almost like they have to have inherently to really operate at a really, really high level. Guys like Jefferson, for example, like that's a great example. My team's Miami, unfortunately, but that's
Oh, okay.
it's okay.
You guys have with
Um,
Tyreek Hill. Is he still there, or is he? He
yeah,
was
he's
playing
still
for
there.
Miami for a
Yeah,
while, right? I think he's still
yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah. So it's
he was one of the ones who
to,
was legitimately fast and a good receiver.
and that's such a so often we'll often see like because like they can go so fast, they kind of lose abilities on the other side. I just feel that
hmm
like in hockey as well, like some of the fastest people I've ever seen with except for McDavid can operate at that kind of speed and still operate with their stick, so to see that happen at that kind of rate of speed, that what he's doing is like outworldly. It's crazy. Where most people that are crazy fast just don't have like the hands connected, the brain connected to the hands kind of thing. So on the side, I feel often maybe on the football side as well, where great, you can run a 40 that's like just blazing, but when do you really know how to make that COD to read what the linebacker or the defensive back is really doing?
Yeah, and even I think the game is becoming, at least football, and I think hockey's going this direction. And I don't know enough about baseball to say yay or nay, but it feels like the complexity is getting more and more every year. Like from the amount of plays that are run, the type of plays, the variety of against the teams you play, the different schemes that are used. And I think you are actually seeing players who are much more, I guess for lack of a better word, cognitive, who study a lot more film, who are better at prediction, and obviously have to be very physically capable. Like I think that's becoming sort of like the new level where I think even culture wise, at least in the NFL, maybe 10 years ago, 15, yeah. If you spend that much time studying it, it was almost kind of looked down upon. You're like the weirdo, like, what are you doing? It's just more of a physical thing where,
Yeah.
now again, use examples from the Vikings, like, Andrew Van Ginkel and people who just spend tons of time watching film, and then you watch them play and you can see it register that subconsciously they've seen that same pattern again, and they get like half a step on the football, which makes a massive difference. So to me, you're seeing that complexity actually going up over time. It's not going down.
Oh, for sure. And I was this is my first year with a basketball team as well. Like, especially like
Yeah,
I've worked with
basketball's getting there
basketball.
too.
Like I've worked with a team like off season in the on the off season stuff, but not like actually like hired by the team. It was just more like the team in the summertime kind of stuff. So to work like to be a director of performance for a team and be
Nice.
involved in with all that kind of stuff, that was a wild experience, and being kind of like ignorant in a way to not really knowing the complexity of just the amount of plays that really get like set up in the entirety of the game. Of I've always been a basketball fan, and yeah, you see them like on the clipboards and that kind of stuff
Yeah.
when you're watching it, but when you're there on the bench and you see like players interacting and you see them really thinking about the game, like to me that was such a like mind-blowing experience for me, like just because when I watch someone move, I don't really watch the sport. I watch like what that means, how they're moving, like that kind of stuff.
Yep.
It just kind of I can't turn it off. My wife hates it.
Yeah.
We'll go to a hockey, football, whatever game, whatever, and it's always on. So to see that side of like just how the level that the players are really thinking of. What the other players are doing. Like I've seen it in football where the plays are there, but in basketball, it's just kind of like too much to the outside, like too much of a fan and not much of a on the staff side. but it is mind blowing at just how much they really talk and communicate with our team, anyways, to see just what they're going to be doing even after the coach presents the play. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think sports that are a little bit more continuous, like hockey and basketball, I think it's harder to see what's going on because everything just sort of blends into the next thing because of the nature of the sport. Where with at least American football, you have a definite stop and you have a
Yep.
definite start and you get a static picture before stuff happens. So I think it's just a little bit easier to see in sports like that as an outsider.
Well, for sure. Like in hockey, there's always a play, but it never goes to like, I can't say never. It's probably a 90 some percent. You have your set play for your face off, and then it just kind of chaos breaks out.
Yeah.
So, so you know what you want to do, you know how you want to enter in the zone, but you don't know if that's really that rarely ever happens to plan, right? So, um, yeah.
And then a follow-up question on the Moxie testing. Do
Mhm.
you think were you able to measure like any strength tests? And do you think that a lower Moxie score would have been better? So for listeners, like you're measuring what's called SMO2. So you're just looking at this little device that sticks onto the muscle and it's shooting a little basically near infrared, like a little red light into the muscle. It's trying to determine like how much oxygen the muscle is using, maybe blood flow, some other parameters. And so the theory I was wondering is if the muscle is stronger, so it's contracting harder and you're running plays, you would expect the SMO2 to go down then because the muscle's working harder and maybe it's constricting more of the blood flow. So you might expect, in air quotes, a worse or a lower SMO2 in that area might be more indicative of acute performance.
So what we did, because I followed that up with a 30-second fatigue index
Oh, interesting. Okay.
on a bike erg. So some of the boys are producing over 1,000 watts, and then to take a look to see what the girls are producing, some of it was half of that. So that was my interpretation,
Sure.
was just like the wattage that they're producing. I was hoping to be able to try to figure out a way to get the wattage when they were skating, but just that just turned to a mess. So
Yeah, I don't know
um,
how you would do
yeah,
that. That'd be cool
I
though.
don't know. I'm sure someone has figured it out, and
Yeah, yeah.
hit me up if you did. Um, but to see like on the fatigue index, the amount of wattage that they did produce seemingly was, I can't say really tightly correlated to
Right.
performance, but just more for the oxygen utilization seemed to be there. So just because we could use the lab here with the bikers that we
Yep.
have, and we'll use Perf Pro as our pull in for data from the bikes. So that was kind of cool to see. And then it was super interesting as well as that girl I was talking about, where she just committed D1, where she had some of the highest wattage
Hmm.
on the girl side as well. So does it make sense that if they're producing more wattage, then they're utilizing more oxygen? That's what it looked like on the bike. And that was what we wanted to see, was like what matters. Like that's, I think, with the whole term of the whole of sports science in a team sport is track what you think matters, but what really matters, So things like what we found like in a 10-meter sprint, I'm just looking because I know some of the guys will be coming in here anytime, but um, we found that a couple of things were pretty tightly correlated to sprint performance as in
Hmm.
the 10-meter acceleration. I wanted to see what it looked like on both ends. So both on like relative peak braking power and then also the propulsive power. And we can see that they were like fairly tightly correlated. I need a bigger population to really
Yeah, yeah,
like
sure.
some more digging around, but it made for interesting information though. So the reason why I bring it up is just like to see what really matters. And I think that sometimes we try to like boil it down, like we try to like boil it down to that just
Yeah.
that one thing for us to focus on. And that's not
If it were
possible in
only
team.
so simple.
Right. And I think early on in my career that I did a really piss poor job, honestly, of because I was trying to find just that one thing. Well, strength really matters. Well, yeah, it matters sometimes and it matters a lot,
Yeah.
but it matters more in sometimes than it does in others. Well, power really matters. Well, yeah, that probably matters more often than strength, but it doesn't always matter. Like there's just too many
And if you're
variables
real
there.
weak, good luck trying to get a high power output.
Well, that exactly. So then what do we look at? So do we look at
Yeah.
things like force development or rate of force development? Well, somebody might
Yep.
be able to have, a good rate of force development, but they're weak as shit. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like my buddy Cal Deitz has said, he's like, yeah, rate of force development matters, like max strength matters, but all those only matter up to a point. He's like, if
Yeah,
your athletes are weak as kittens, it that stuff doesn't matter. They just need to get stronger, period. But once they're
exactly.
stronger, he had an athlete, I think, that was early on, I think he was saying they took his max, I think, back squat from 385 to like 435, and he actually got slower. He's like, oh crap. But he then later on had another athlete, I think, that was squatting 365, but was doing it so fast and so violently that he was afraid the bar was going to jump off his back. And he was able to do that with a short period of rest and repeat it again for some ungodly amount of sets without his speed of the lift going down. He's like,
Gotcha.
that's a much better athlete. Like, is his absolute number as high? No, but he can do a high enough output that it's good enough, and then he can do it at speed, and then he can repeat that output for just a huge amount of time and time again.
And yeah, and I think like over like the development of the athlete, of course, things matter more over like differently in different phases of
Oh,
time as
sure.
well. So like just this year, we had a great U15 hockey team that we worked with, and the coaches were. I've worked with one of the coaches before on another team, and I said I really want to run a bit of an experiment this year. And the coaches were like, well, what do you mean? Because they're like, we need these guys, like, this is an important year, like all that kind of good stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I said, I want to do next to no conditioning off ice, and I only want to focus on strength and power. That is all. And they just kind of, with a blank, terrified stare, were like, yeah, okay, let's try it. So we took some kids who were not very good movers, like so one of the kids was able to only back squat like 105 pounds for 5 reps. Like I wouldn't go to a 1 rep max with
Hmm.
kids that were 14. So we're staying to like a 5 rep max kind of thing. Um, and we got them by the end of the year, like the average was 255 for the team. So,
Nice.
but
That's
not,
great.
not. So to me, to see that team be able to get a lot stronger, more powerful, get them to understand some of the training concepts like doing like isometrics, like doing overcoming isometrics, like that
Yep.
kind of stuff, to better be able to get them to understand what's going to be important over time. Then as they grow as an athlete, like we have one kid here who's just under 150 pounds. Just yesterday, he was trap bar deadlifting 440, I think it was
Oh,
for
damn. Nice.
reps, and like
Damn.
he was moving it too. So so talking to him saying, okay, buddy, like, I think we're good on the
Yeah.
you're like almost, you're like 3xing your body weight when it comes to like your
Yeah.
ability to pull. Let's maybe maintain that, but let's kind of work on other qualities too. So, to be able to have the tools like a velocity bar speed reader, to be able to like quantify some of that stuff, to show them just what kind of matters more ish now, if that makes sense. So things like strength, yeah, strength really matters. But then if you're 3xing your body weight or 2.5xing your body weight, like great, but could we maybe get more valuable use out of our time by training things like power qualities, or maybe some other things that are maybe more skill based as well? So it's not just about what happens here, but like, okay, we've hit a pretty good spot. I don't think that we're really going to develop a lot more past what we're going to do with the time that we have, so we can maintain those qualities, and then we can move into other areas, because we're not just trying to build like weightlifters and power lifters. We're trying to build athletes. So, and that was my mistake, I think, early on, like when I first started to work with people, was everyone had to be strong as hell, and really that's all. That's it. Strength checks a lot of boxes, especially for high school kids. But then when does the rate of return start to go down, when we need to focus so much time on that development?
Yeah. And I think that's the cool part about looping back to technology. Like we've got newer technology that's becoming, cheaper. Like I used at the University of Minnesota, Cal Deitz has a 1080 machine that's on, but not the Sprint one, but the one that's on the Smith machine. And you
Okay.
can do programmed eccentric, you can do overload, it'll measure output. Amazing device. And this is probably, well, it was 3 years ago I was down there. It's $50,000 though. It's like, oh, wow, that'd be cool to have. But, and now fast
But
forward, you've got like Beyond Power has like the Vultra One device, which
yeah,
is a portable unit, and you can do up to 200 pounds. So I can do rows with 100 pounds concentric, and then I can immediately add 50 pounds more eccentric on it. I can do
gotcha.
isokinetic testing. I can do isometric testing. And again, it's not a cheap device, but it's cheaper than a $50,000 device. And so we're getting to the point where we've got more options now, both from the monitoring side, and also we're seeing some very cool and, novel training devices too that are utilizing technology to, that one's a cable driven, but you've got EM units now, and you've got all sorts of stuff on the market, which is great.
Yeah, and I kind of made my own poor man's 1080 by
Oh,
taking
there you go.
an Exergenie. So just like I don't know, a couple $100, a few $100 maybe. And then I took a modified crane scale and just put it between the camber, like the carabiner, I should say, flipped it to the unit, and then had the athlete pull on that so we can see the kind of like uh the
Oh,
the weight that they're pulling,
yeah,
like
yeah,
true
yeah,
weight, and it'll
yeah.
track it too, like using like a G strength, like that's what I use there.
Okay.
So to be able to use the G strength, a few $100, the Extra Genie is a few $100. I'm not saying it's as effective as a 1080. I
Oh, yeah,
wish I
yeah,
could,
totally.
but as a poor man's version, to be able to have that was like gave me great data. I just have my laser timers and to get their sprint momentum, and gave me great information.
Yeah, I won't say the name of the coach who told me this. 'Cause I don't want to get anyone in trouble because they might be sponsored by 1080. But they were saying he's like, yeah, the poor man's version, if you want to go like, old school caveman, just have some sort of timing area and then just have the athlete drag chains.
Yep.
Adjust the length and weight of the chain and how much is dragging. And by measuring the peak drop off time between their max time without chains and with chains, you can approximate like how much a load you're getting. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
And even with that, you could get by using like a G strength as well. Like you can get
Yeah,
like the
same
true,
idea.
just by using that. I love the chain idea. You can really see like just how much they're pulling by taking that same amount of chain across the same surface and seeing exactly how
Yep.
much
Yeah,
they're
you can just
pulling.
monitor
So
with the device. Yep.
yeah, so even just as a quick go-to. So that's a great idea though.
Yeah. Cool. So as we wrap up, is there any like newer technology or stuff that you're like, oh man, this thing is so cool. I love XYZ that you've kind of been playing around with that you really like.
So the Plantiga monitors have been, I know I've kind of like sung their praises,
Yeah, yeah.
but to have something so like simple on the athlete side, like I'm monitoring people that are even not even in the same city. So I have
That's
them,
crazy.
so I can get information like how fast are they really sprinting instead of
Yep.
just getting, yeah, coach, here's my tracker. I get, okay, you moved at 19.8 miles an hour. Cool. Why are you going slower? What's going on? Like just to be able to have those really in-depth conversations. So
And you get the
um,
diagnostics to see what changed too. So not only do you get an
exact
output, which you need to know, are they getting better or worse, but you get sort of the sub-diagnostics of what has possibly changed.
apps, and it's like, okay, it's 400 times a second, right? So we can see, steps, ground contact time, and insert whatever you can think of here, and then I can take that data, throw it into Studio to see, like, to pull any other information that I want. So I don't think there's been a product that I've used that I can take the lab and throw it into the field of play.
And what is the approximate cost on those, just for people who are listening?
So it's about $1,000,
Okay.
but um, I feel that especially for those athletes and coaches that are really looking to make a difference, I don't think there's a better investment than that. And they're amazing to deal with. Like they've done some great work. The NBA's invested a ton of resources to them to develop the WNBA as well,
Oh,
to try
nice.
to like, so a lot of really cool, like great story too of the come up for them. So good people. Quinn's the CEO. He's a great guy, and just the team that he has behind him has been like quite impressive. So The super quick, the most impressive one, I think, more recently, that has been the use of some just AI technology when it comes to just monitoring an athlete using a camera and just the information we get from that now. I think that's going to be the wild side of things the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think just the ability of AI to parse huge amounts of data. Back to the NFL, like the NFL for quite a while has had most teams have multiple data experts, and all they've done is just analyze and mine data. And like you said, present it to the coach and the staff. Where I think now the ability to take old data sets, new data sets, look for patterns that may not have, been there and leverage AI to do that in a desktop computer in a matter of seconds now is going to be pretty wild.
Yeah, that was the without that kind of heavy lifting being done, honestly, I'd spend all my time doing that. So to be
Yeah,
able to
because we're
have
old enough
a,
to have tried to do that old school,
oh
and
my
it is
God.
so hard. It is the amount of open columns and crap you've got on spreadsheets and arguing about what stats method to use and even what to look at because
Oh, big time.
as the data sets get bigger, it just becomes almost virtually impossible.
Like just with in one basketball game, we would get 4.5 million rows of data. So good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's super cool. Where can people find out more about you? I know you have some stuff online and the URL and everything else there.
Yeah, for most, I'd be on Instagram. That's where I do most of my social stuff. Just at Troy Beauregard, and that's where honestly, where and on LinkedIn, a little same thing. But mostly, I'm on Instagram.
Cool. Awesome. And give out your location again if anyone happens to be in your area there and wants to work with you in the physical spot.
Yeah, I'm in Sudbury, Ontario. We're about 4 hours north of Toronto for anyone listening. But that's yeah, we're here and happy to help.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that. I really appreciate it. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, you as well,
Thank
bud.
you. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Huge thanks to Troy for coming on and spilling the beans on all the really cool stuff that he's doing there with testing all of athletes and just everything he has going on. So I always love talking to practitioners on the side of applied knowledge. So obviously learning more is going to be beneficial, but at the end of the day, how you apply it is what makes a huge difference. So make sure to check out all of Troy's stuff there. And if you are in the area where he's at up near Canada, make sure to check him out in person. For sponsors, check out our friends over at Element. Today I've been drinking the raspberry one, which has been great. If you're looking for a device to do changes of concentric and eccentrics and isometric and even isokinetic testing, I'll actually even display power at the same time. Check out my friends over at Beyond Power with the Voltra 1 device. I've had it now for, as of this recording, I think it's about 7 weeks. And I really love it. It's something I used literally almost every day. I think I have used it every day. I've gone to the gym here to train in some capacity or another. Lately I've been playing with actually doing bicep curls, which I don't do a lot of, but for grip stuff is going to be beneficial. And I've been playing around with using heavy chains on that, which is kind of a different movement, which actually felt pretty good because you can then change the strength curves on different movements depending upon what you're doing. Obviously, each component is going to have a point where you're mechanically stronger or weaker. And what's fun about the device is you can change it so that you can see more overloads in different parts of the strength curve. And if you want to get uber geeky, you can even customize your own strength curves within the device, which is pretty wild. And then instead of loading more chains on or setting up bands, which I still do and I still like the use of those, I just hit one button and it'll automatically change everything. And if you want to get super geeky, you can even run a heavy eccentric with chains at the same point. So if I'm doing, again, my seated row, and I really want to emphasize that back position, I can actually run a heavy eccentric and a high amount of chains so that the load is high at that end position for an isometric, and then I still have a heavy eccentric component. So check that out below. It is an affiliate link, so assume I do make some money from that. In terms of testing and more on the metabolic side, check out our friends Panoe. If you are interested in that device, tell them Dr. Mike T. Nelson sent you, or just drop me an email. More than happy to put you in touch. If you're looking to do full metabolic cart testing, you can gas cal the device as to make it as accurate as possible. That'll allow you to measure both carbohydrate and fat metabolism. So check them out. I've been using it for quite a while. Really enjoy it. And lastly, if you're looking for recovery, check out our friends over at Kill Switch. This is a new supplement I've been playing around with, and I actually really like it for sleep. A lot of stuff for sleep I haven't noticed makes a pretty big difference, and I would say on my Aura scores I'm usually about at least 20% better when I use it. And my wife really loved it, so she was pestering me the other day of when we're going to get more in. So check them out below. Again, that is also an affiliate link, but it's something that I found for sleep really does seem to help a vast majority of people. So check them out below also. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. We got a ton more episodes coming up here very soon. Everything from one of the guys who is a creator of Diners, Dive-Ins, and Drives. So thank you so much for checking out the podcast. We've got tons of great episodes coming up very soon. So stay tuned for those. Thank you so much for listening. You can do us a favor by sending this to someone who may enjoy the podcast, hitting the old subscribe button, especially on YouTube. That's very helpful. Download, all the wonderful things to help with the algorithm. Thank you so much. We'll talk to all of you next week.
Now that's talent. An opera singer who tap dances and sings cowboy songs. I wonder if there's anything she isn't good at.
Yes? Choosing what show to be on.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.